geldiniz diyorum. Öncelikli olarak ümit ediyorum ki bu son kez yaptığımız.
Thank you very much. I wish that this is one of the last meetings that we are having on the online platforms, and I wish we will have the chance to come together in the upcoming years. And today we'll be talking about very important issues in today's sessions and what is going on in today's conditions, whether these opening to public will continue or not, IPOs, is it going to continue or not? Because there is a surge in IPOs during the pandemic, and what does it mean for the companies who are at the urge of IPO? I'd like to introduce you our panelists.
Geras, Pedro has joined the World Federation of Exchange in October 2019 from the Bank of England, where he led the Financial Market Infrastructure Directors Research Team. He had joined the Bank of England in 2013 after 2 years at the UK Financial Services Authority. Previous to Pedro spent more than 15 years lecturing and doing research at a range of well-regarded academic institutions, including University of Barcelona and Instituto Tecnología Autónoma de Mexico. Pedro holds 2 PhDs, one from the University of Barcelona, Spain, and one from the University of Montpellier, France, and has published across various academic journals, including the Journal of Financial Market Infrastructure, the Journal of Risk, International Finance, and the Journal of Futures Markets. His recent work includes research on the economics of distributed ledger technologies for securities settlement, on the network structure of settlement fails, and on market liquidity risk in CCPs. İkinci olarak ben Yapı Kredi Yatırım'dan Sadık Çulcuoğlu'nu.
I'd like to introduce our other panelists to you. Sadık Çulcuoğlu comes from Yapı Kredi Invest. He is the head of Capital Markets Advisory. And he is the head of corporate finance at Yapı Kredi Invest for the last 7 years. In his role, he advises corporate clients to raise capital through equity and debt capital markets transactions. He has 17 years of total experience in investment management and investment banking businesses. Before coming back to Turkey in 2010, he worked as a senior buy-side analyst at a Boston, USA-based asset management firm for 6 years, investing in corporate bonds in both developed and emerging markets. He has MBA and MS in finance degrees from Boston College. And other panelists, Canan Özer, was born in 1967 in Bingöl. He graduated from Anadolu University Department of Statistics in 1997. He has worked in various departments in the finance sector and has over 20 years of experience. He started his career at EPA Computer Software as a software technical support officer. He started to work at Oyak Securities in 2000. Between 2000 and 2003, he worked in the QT's corporate finance, treasury, mutual funds departments. Between 2003 and 2019, he worked as a specialist and is interested in Turkish and world history, etc. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Süleyman Metezadil. Since 2015, he is the CEO of Arzum, one of Turkey's leading small home appliances brands. Listed among the names leading Arzum's strategy for the last 5 years, Mr. Zadil has demonstrated his experience in restructuring, growth, and business development. In December 2020, he carried out a successful IPO, which resulted with record demand. During these 5 years, Mr. Zadil has also been one of the names behind many achievements, such as being the first company to export to USA, winning the Super Brand Award, the Innova League Championship, the Best Managed Company Award, and category leadership after civil engineering education at the University of Delaware between 1989 and 1993. Mr. Zadil completed a civil engineering master's degree at Cornell University. The moderator is reading the CV of the speaker, and he has also assumed many important other roles. After introducing our panelists, first and foremost, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Pedro.
Please let me, Mr. Pedro, could you talk about a little bit, what is the global trends in terms of the delisting trends before the pandemic and surge in IPOs during the pandemic? Do you think that whether this trend is sustainable or not, how regulators and exchanges react to the surge in IPOs? Please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you first to the organizers for inviting me to this summit. I'm very pleased to be here. From a global perspective, answering your question, I think that what we see is a quite interesting picture. If I may, let me remember that if we look by regions, for example, in the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, during 2000 and 2018 and 2019, we were seeing a delisting trend. So in 2019, for example, across the region, we have 83 delistings, a lower number of IPOs regard comparison to 2018. In 2020, this trend was reversed, and we saw an increase, a strong increase in 2020 of IPOs, and a even larger increase we are seeing in 2021, even if we're still in November. So that's an interesting thing, and that's as I said, this is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. If we look at America, there's also a similar trend, but it's not so steep. So we didn't have such a strong delisting trend before 2020, and then the change of sign in 2020 was positive, but not so strong as in the EMEA region. And finally, if we think of Asia Pacific, we again, globally, we were seeing before 2020 a delisting trend, and that trend reversed in 2020 with a strong increase, which has not been constant. In 2021, it's still a positive trend, but not as strong as 2020. Just to give some numbers, in 2020, we saw 169 more IPOs. And in 2021, we're only seeing 13 more IPOs compared to the previous year. So what is this telling us? So first of all, that there's a question of why during 2020, when we would all expect that because of the uncertainty in the market, there will be less IPOs, so companies will be reluctant to go public because of the different risks that we were seeing at the start of the year. But this didn't happen. The reality is that across the three regions, 2020, we saw a change in the trend and an increase in the number of new IPOs. And as I said before, this was stronger in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. It was Asia Pacific also strong, and less in America. And then what we see is that in 2021, it's only in the EMEA region that this trend persists. So we still have a strong positive increase in IPOs, while in Americas, it's still more or less the same. And in Asia Pacific, it has reversed again to a lower increase. So there are differences across regions, which would be interesting to understand why is it that this happened. It's worth noting also that the different regions have different levels of foreign investment, and that could be also a factor to take into account. So in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region, on average, in the last years, we have seen 11% of companies listed being foreign companies. That 11% compares to 15% in Americas, and in Asia Pacific with a much lower number, which is a 5%. So there are different trends in the IPOs and in the type of companies listed in terms of foreign versus domestic. Now, when the pandemic started, one of the things that at the WFE we did was try to track what were the exchanges doing in terms of response to the pandemic and to stimulate and keep the IPO pipeline alive. So there were different actions that the exchanges took at that time. And in some sense, these actions can also point to the question about what we can do to keep this trend and what both regulators and exchanges can be doing to maintain this trend. I mean, certainly it was a very difficult time and the exchanges had to take strong initiatives to keep the IPO pipeline flowing. So for example, some of the things that were done at that time had to do with AGMs, with the annual general meetings, facilitating virtual voting, facilitating financial reporting. In many cases, this required changes in the legislation and the approval of the national competent authorities. For example, to allow video conference annual general meetings, offering extended deadlines for disclosures. And this certainly helped at that time. A second action that was taken at that time, and maybe a way forward to incentivize IPOs, has to do with relaxing some of the requirements on financial statements, extending deadlines, facilitating disclosures. And again, this will require coordination with the national competent authorities. But that's another thing that at that time was very helpful to keep companies, especially those companies that were small companies that were struggling at the time of the pandemic, to keep them in the markets. The exchanges were also intensifying the efforts to bring in contact issuers and credit rating agencies, which was particularly important in the case of firms that were stressed at the time. Fee relief. Some of the measures that exchanges took at that time was to extend the listing fee payment deadlines for companies that were suffering from COVID-19, and other measures that were aimed at stimulating liquidity, discounting trading fees, discounting additional listing fees. And other measures had to do with temporary relief to allow companies that to do kind of low document placements, encouraging institutional investors and governments to raise funds through the financial markets and extending the term of different requirements. So in essence, all these measures are just examples of initiatives that the exchanges took at the time to help the companies that were struggling and also to incentivize listing through IPOs. Some of these measures can be a way forward, trying to attract especially the small and medium enterprises to the markets, to the public markets. It will require cooperation from the national authorities, of course, and in each particular case, I guess there will be different individual circumstances that could explain the surge in IPO and could help moving forward in keeping this trend alive in the following years. So let me stop here. Thank you.
Wrap up what you said there. Değerli konuklarımız ve değerli panelistler.
Esteemed guests, esteemed panelists, as Pedro has mentioned, compared to pandemic, before pandemic, the listing trend and IPO trend is based on the development level of the countries and based on the development level of the country's capital markets board and also regulators and also exchanges. They have done certain things and he also mentioned what they should do. So during a COVID period, as Capital Markets Board and Istanbul Stock Exchange, we provided certain flexibilities in the regulations in order to enable IPOs. For instance, we announced a new principal decision and we have taken certain decisions to decrease the costs and take certain measures to facilitate the processes, and general assemblies took place on the online platforms. And on the online platform, he said that it was very important having video conferences and doing certain things on the online platform. Actually, as Turkish Capital Markets Board, we have this very modern and technological infrastructure, and our companies have this possibility. So actually, during this COVID period, it was a great possibility and opportunity for us. And thank you very much, Pedro, for your comments. I'll give the floor to Sadık secondly, and Sadık Bey will be talking about intermediary companies in terms of IPOs and the trends for IPOs. He will be talking about what does the intermediary agency do in terms of enabling IPOs, what are the international practices, and what is the current application in Turkey, how to enhance this. The floor is yours, Sadık.
Teşekkürler Ali Bey.
Thank you very much, and let me just quickly take over from Pedro, and he was talking about the IPOs, especially that they have been going at a fast track, and 2020 and in 2021 this trend is still ongoing. And in particular, we see that this main mobility has happened on 2021. 1 billion Turkish liras of IPOs have been made in last year in Turkey. This year, however, there is a great amount of a tsunami, as far as I can say. There has been 46 IPOs that happened only last week, and 19.5 million Turkish liras of a volume has been received. So taking a look to this perspective, at $2 billion of equality can we talk about? We have to think about the last 5 years. $2 million means actually the total of the last 5 years. And as for units, we need to be tackling about the last 8 years. So the total IPO number is at about can only be actually equalized with the number that we received this year. So it's quite mobile, and it's we are very proud of this mobility in the capital markets, and I think that we have a good period of time. And by the way, we have to say as well that these are local IPOs, domestic IPOs, generally IPOs for the local investors, and in general the size is to $50 billion of IPOs. And on an international level, on the other side, there are different type of processes going on, particularly from the side of the investor, and the transactions are more than $200 billion, in which the foreign investors are mainly been implemented. So we didn't see this in this process. In general, what we have seen is basically the local IPOs that have happened. And briefly, let me tell you about from the demand and supply space, what are the basic trends that are ongoing. So in the last 19.5 million liras of IPOs are actually a great approximately 9 million Turkish liras funds have been involved inside the companies, and the rest of it, so which is at about $10.5 million, is at about uncommon sales and has been shared to the stakeholders. And as for the sector, by the way, there is a widespread distribution and the energy sector. And as for the size of the balance, as far as we can say, on volume-based, the highest number of investment has been made in energy sector. There has been 11 IPOs, and 8.1 billion liras of a volume has been received. And on the other side, again, industry, $2.8 billion in pharmaceutical and health sector. Technology, financial services are dominant sectors that we can talk as for IPOs. The transactions are generally been made locally, as we said before, and in average, the volume is $420 million. And the largest transaction is from Ziraat GO, 1.8 billion Turkish liras. But when we take a look to the numbers of transactions that have that are more than 1 billion liras was 4 or 5 IPOs. And that's we have for medium-sized enterprises in particular, there is a possibility and an accession to reach to these funds. And from the side, this is a point of view of the demand. And as for supply, by the way, there are two different channels. One is corporate based and an individual based IPOs as from the side of supply. Together with independent media, certain trends that are ongoing, and particularly from the individual side, we have also observed this matter in the Turkish market in particular. For years, the shares have been reached to 2.5 billion liras, which was only 1 billion lira in the past. That is a new fresh flow for our market, which for me, which is more important, is actually the corporate investor on a local basis. So this was actually flowing for the time being, but in particularly where the macroeconomic volatilities are going on, we see that these aspects are right now permanent. The investment funds are excess from $200 billion, and the insurance funds are accessing $200 billion again. And that is the reason why in IPOs there is a permanent corporate IPO interest right now that is ongoing, which is very much important for pricing, and it is important, and also for permanent professional basis. This is highly important. And as a matter of fact, there are 46 IPOs that have been made this year on an individual and corporate basis, and where have been the allocations been made, and 60-65% median is individual based, and the rest is in corporate. The 25% is at about corporate based, and the rest is actually business workers, staff, etc. And let me just say a few words about the valuation and also the process about pricing and valuation. And there is $200 billion of IPOs that have been made domestically. And in such transactions, in global funds are actually giving interest, and that is that necessitates a higher amount of a fund. And as a result of this, 70% and 80% is allocated to foreign investors. And it happens to be that in international evaluation, the connection with the feedbacks taken from the local bodies are actually the basic issue. So in connection with them and throughout the process, the first connections and communication has been made on the corporate financial teams. But more than that, in valuation areas, an independent analyst and research analysts are training the financials. And in the last period of time of the process, there is a price range, and according to this price range, the roadshow has been made in certain meetings, and this is how we actually complete the process. This is a classical method, actually. We are getting in communication with the investors and we receive feedback here. Of course, the corporate basis is very much important, and taking a look to this matter from the professional point of view is very much important. In a local basis, on the other hand, of course, we do the similar thing, similar process again, but here we have also a pricing determination report, which is very much important for us. And I think this is very valuable because as a result, we have to make a pricing determination, particularly which is important for the individuals. And we need to have a transparency here and during the process, a transparency about the company, and also the approaches of the evaluation is very necessary. So throughout the process, of course, the investors are becoming very acquainted to it, as far as we can understand from the questions. And there's also an analysis report, which I can briefly explain, that those who are not leadering are giving an opinion to the pricing report. That is also important. Of course, they can be comparative. We can take a look to the matter with a comparative way, which is also giving a better idea to the investors. And in the process, at the valuation part, could be the exporters or could be the investors. In between, the communication and also the estimations for valuation is increasing, which is a great amount of an importance for the parties. 65% of individual people are actually attending to the IPOs. And for this case, this amount is really high, and that's the reason why this process is very much important. And for the future estimates, of course, the investors have come from a certain level, of course, could be the individual pension system or the investors. There have been certain reforms that have been made. If we couldn't come up to this amount, to this volume, maybe then we cannot be talking about these IPOs. Of course, this is not stopping here. This is a process that will ongo. And that is the reason why I believe that the way is going to increase. That's why the process is going to be in which the corporate institutions are going to drive the car right now. And there are different things going on in the world, particularly the individual investors are also seen in the world, not only in Turkey, because there are different types of platforms in the world, or in social media groups, for instance. There are different types of mobilities going on there, and that's the reason why the individual investors are making valuation and pricing in very strong corporate institutions, and which is also getting involved, in which the IPOs are also getting involved in it. So that is the reason why the individual investors' behaviors and their attitudes and their interest to the stock exchange, of course, is something that we generally see around the globe. And within a healthy balance, I suppose, the stakeholders will get benefit of it and manage it with a transparent approach. Thank you very much. And these were very important issues. And in the IPOs around the world, in generally, there's small-sized volumes in the past, and they said that in the last year there was not very much actually interest from the international investors, and the individual investors are getting very much interested in IPOs. There's a 65% of an interest. And now I would like to give the floor Mr. Canan. And in the last period of time, of course, there's a great amount of an interest to the IPOs from the side of the investors, and how they help the individuals, and how can you ease actually individuals to access to these areas. Distinguished participants, and
for companies to express themselves, we know that it's very crucial for increasing the IPOs, and investors, if they plan to be a partner to the companies, they have to analyze the structure of the companies, and they need to know the companies better. This is what we say. And one of the important things is here that when the companies are analyzed, investors need to find certain documents to know them better. But how can they find these documents, and how can they evaluate these documents? And by the way, these documents are on the websites of the companies, and they are also on the public enlightenment clarification institutions website. So there are some IPO related documents. But the most important thing is that how individual investors should be evaluating these documents. First and foremost, they have to be having a look at the registration statement of the companies they are offering circular. So I'd like to separate the offering circular into 4 parts. First and foremost, an investor should be knowing the company that he wants to be a part of. And we have to be looking at the exported capital markets instrument, and we have to be looking at the capital markets instrument, and we need to understand the risks of the companies and also the instruments that they are exporting. So we have to be evaluating the risks. And on the fourth part, when it comes to at the very urge of the exportation issuance, they have to be also looking at certain important factors. So these are some of the main titles, and I'd like to give you the details. In the very beginning, first and foremost, the partnership structure of the company and information with respect to management, top management, their affiliated companies, and also the competitors of their own sector. If it's a group company, then other companies in the group should be also evaluated. At this very stage, if we have evaluated this, we can say that we know this company, and we also be looking at the distribution policy of the profits of the company and also the structure of the companies on the General Assembly and partnership. So afterwards, when we know about the company and when we know the rights of the company, we can also evaluate the risks, because at this very point, company and also the capital markets instrument and also capital instrument that is issued, everything, and also the changes could be evaluated under the title of risks. And at the last part of this offering circular, especially individual investors should be attaching much more importance to these factors. IPOs, how IPOs are distributed, how IPOs are designed, and also the rate of the subvention. This is very crucial. And for instance, whether they could have some demands on the joint accounts repetitively, this is very crucial. And yes, after talking about the offering circular under 4 different titles, we can also talk about independent reports, independent audit reports. So on the independent audit reports, there must be 3 yearly retrospective values of the companies, like financial charts and also equities and some other balance sheet tables, and also the items on the balance sheet. Their analysis, retrospectively 3 years analysis, should be made on the independent audit report. And when it comes to the financial table analysis, the report, the price determination report, is the report that the company's prices are determined, detected. And some other intermediary groups analysis reports must also be evaluated on this price determination report. So the sector, so the pricing report should be also evaluating some international appraisal and also rating methods. Then based on this method, the price of the company is determined. So based on this price, there is this discount. After that, the price for the IPO could be determined. And at the very end, this offering circular and all the annexes should be seen at a holistic perspective. And as investors, we should be analyzing everything all together, and we have to be analyzing everything together. After receiving enough information, we can also consult our representatives and also advisory groups, and we can learn more about other issues. I hope it's been explanatory. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. You have touched upon very crucial, important topics, because in the IPOs, especially in the last year, we have seen excessive demand for IPOs. And from time to time, as you have mentioned, we might see certain behavioral changes. So we should not be impulsive. We should be definitely looking at the price determination reports and also the company's features and these offering circular, etc. When the investors have not touched upon these important documents, certain complaints can be issued. And for instance, half of the IPOs are increase on the capital, and also the half of it is the joint sales. As you have mentioned, this is very important, especially the knowledge level is very crucial. Those documents must be definitely known, whether it's the common joint sales or else increase on the capital. It must be known. And as the capital markets boards, we need to know this very well, because whether this bond is going to be used for the company sales or else is it going to be used for the partners, etc., they must be evaluated, and based on these, decisions could be made. Risks are very crucial, so these certified, these issued instruments are very crucial because of the excessive demands. So the subventions are not distributed very well, and there is no fair subvention distribution. This is very crucial, and we want all the companies to be paying attention to this. You haven't mentioned this, but the projections and the future perspective of the company is very crucial, because it is very much important on the price determination. Especially individual investors should be looking at the future prospects of the companies, and also intermediaries, stockbrokers, they should also evaluate the situation. If they find it reasonable, they can take part in these IPOs so that they will not be victimized in the future. Thank you very much for this very valuable information you have given us. In the IPOs, one of the very basic stakeholders is, of course, companies on the supply side of the issue. And last December, Arzum had a great successful IPO, and I'd like to give the floor to Mete Bey. Mete Bey, what can you say? What is your perspective as a company? What can you say for IPO? What kind of an preparation is needed before IPO is made, and what have you gained after your IPO? Actually, 1 year is a very long time. Can you please provide us a retrospective evaluation? It's not a very rosy picture, I think. What are the challenges and responsibilities and also extra obligations that has been brought by IPOs? If you can touch upon them very briefly, maybe it could be paving the way for the companies who'd like to have the IPOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, and Mr. Jana was talking about the offering circular, and actually it was not a long period of time. You have a certain period of time you decided to open yourself to the public then, but first of all, you have to be ready. You need to institutionally, corporately, and your governance and your transparency has to be prepared, and the timing is also very much important. As Mrs. Sadka said, actually, we are very lucky. 2020 and 2021 are really good times for IPOs, to open yourself to IPOs. Of course, when there's such a tornado, of course, you need to evaluate yourself. And if your company is also ready for this, and if it is decided, then indeed you come up together with a team, and it is a management team of your company. And of course, there's a great amount of a burden on the management team. And as Mr. Ali has said, I am a civil constructor, and there's a project, and you are the only person who is knowing everything, when the sand is going to come in, when the cement is going to come, and when it's going to prepare, etc. And then now here in this period of time, the CFO has all the responsibilities, and there's an extreme amount of burden on the team. So in order to create a offering circular and other things, there are so many things to be done, and you have 135 days to complete. It seems like a long time, but it doesn't suffice. And we also couldn't catch it in the beginning. And there is a learning curve over there. The more you can prepare yourself in the beginning, the better. And when we talk about the team, don't think only about finances, because all the governance, all the management teams over there with you, because of the offering circular, not everything is about finances, market information, where are we could compare to our competitors, etc. If you put down all the information down there, and in general also, the managers have to be, didn't have any kind of an experience about IPOs. Of course, when you are going to give an information, that information is also going to be learned by the competitor. And that is the reason why in all information has to be eliminated, whether you're going to actually put this information inside this circular or not, etc. As Mr. Ali has said, we need to actually create this. The offering circular is a very important document indeed. Then on the other hand, of course, we need to also protect our company. It is really hard, and it's an art to actually keep that balance. And we are doing long times of meetings. We need to give we need to give importance to this. Of course, the marketing team is also a lot of burden, and these are really important steps to be taken so that the company is known. Of course, the mediator company is very much important when we talk about all these issues. We need to be also working together with the mediator. The mediator has to understand you well. It's very critical. When we select the mediator, we think that we have selected the right one, because we have also seen some certain presentations which couldn't understand us well. And on the other side, there are those that only wanted to sell it to the foreign investors, and it was a Christmas period of time, and the foreigners were having Christmas at that period of time. They were in holidays, and they weren't actually interested in the our IPO, and we opened it up to the local investors, and it was the right decision. And we are talking about the Turkish brand right now, and it is really important that the company is well known, and it is very important that it is well marketed. It's very critical. But by the way, while we're doing all this, we need to defend the investor also. The investor, we need to watch for the investors here. These investors are really busy and very smart people. Then the roadshow, whatever they want to hear, has to be clearly stated. And we need to be away from any kind of unnecessary information. Giving too much information is not really always good. And the mediator already says that what the investor is seeking for. So the critical information has to be clearly stated to the investor at that period of time. And apart from this, we also have we need to also select a law firm and also an advertisement firm. So that's the reason why we decided to actually work with a very serious and very experienced law firm. And that was critical, and that was a right one as well. But we decided to work with a commercial agency that is also experienced with IPOs as well. That was also a right decision, because the communication that you are going to make is very critical. There's some critical frameworks that you need to stand in. So apart from this, of course, this valuation indeed has been constantly questioned by our side as well, depending on the quality of the company. Of course, it can have a common sales here. It can have, you can have get resources to the company, etc. The mediator company, in order to keep their own image, wants to have the right price. The stock exchange says that the stock exchange, on the other hand, wants to have a higher pricing, of course, so that that their clients get a higher price later on. But each and everybody does have a different wish and demand, and of course, the coordination does necessarily need an orchestration, and the CEO makes that orchestration. He's a conductor of it, and that has to be done at the right time, at the right place, which is very much critical. So the minimum price, we have the minimum price and maximum price. Indeed, we had a 50 folds of pricing. People ask whether it was normal. If there wasn't actually that framework, then that demand would it be actually in a more balanced way? But of course, I'm not really sure about that. I definitely believe that the capital markets do know this certain issue in a better way. I think that we need to open that interval a little bit more than normal. But we shouldn't be afraid from this process. Everybody is helping you a lot. The Istanbul Stock Exchange and the Istanbul Capital Markets Board helped us a lot. During the summer, it was the feast time, and our management and our financial department hasn't made any kind of application, but the analyst didn't make any vacation at all. Everybody did what they had at hand, but the 135 days goes with the flow, blows with the wind, actually. And it's sudden, it is gone. Maybe I had the opportunity to answer your question. Yes, wonderful. You definitely framed what it takes to be attentive as a company. Well, it's not easy. We already understand that it is not easy to open yourself up to the public as IPOs. It is necessary to have a pre-preparation, a preparation. And you were talking about a mediator company, you were talking about a law firm and also a commercial agency. So briefly, it also, can you just talk a little bit about what the duties are, what type of duties does it bring up to the company? It didn't bring up any kind of a big burden because we, as for reporting, we were very already strong. And as for transparency, we were always transparent. We could give any kind of an information anywhere. But on the contrary, as for transparency, we have made an arrangement because we couldn't give the information whenever we wanted to, because if you just share an information to somebody else, but not the public, that is not, of course, possible right now any longer. About the burdens, yes, of course, as for on the legal boundaries, yes, there is a certain amount of burden. There's also an internal audit. We are going to have an internal audit. Of course, there's also going to be and the communication with the investors a level, which I believe is very much important. We can do this also with those who have licenses as well legally. But instead, we have recruited somebody who knows all about this. And that's the reason why there is an extra burden over this. And reporting, etc., does necessitate a certain discipline, but it wasn't a big burden for us. We were very ethical in league. There was an additional load, a burden on a legal basis as communication, and there are also new frameworks. Sustainability, for instance, is a very important area in which we have to make serious studies because we have now here independent. We have right now new managers amongst us as for investors, and they're talking about sustainability, which will bring us a new point of view. We will be having a sustainability committee soon, and actually, it is actually keeping you disciplined. Yes, of course, you can have some certain burdens, but on the other side, it is like how your mom and dad is pushing you forward. The thing that you want to do is to climb up, and for the consistency and for the permanency of the company, I believe this is very beneficial for the future of the company. Thank you very much, Mr. Mete. I wanted to underline this because we shouldn't take a look to the meta of IPOs. When you're inside the capital markets, you have actually a connection on long and short term and medium term. So you have also great amount of responsibilities on the other side. So it is great that you have to sustain it. Indeed, the companies, when they want to make an IPO, does have to have offshore definitely responsibilities. There are some certain issues that they need to abide by on a legislative and regulative level. So this is something that the companies have to know so that they can actually plan themselves and program themselves. And this is what we are expecting from the companies. And thank you very much for all the information that you have given us. Thank you. And we can pass on to the questions and the answers session if you allow me.
One of the questions sent to us after IPOs: what can we do in order not to have a lower price after IPOs? Maybe Canan Bey and also stock brokers, intermediary institutions, representatives can answer about this. Here, there are certain precautions we can take because when we are talking about IPOs, it means that previously, a security is not subject to any transaction. So there's a risk here, of course, and that price has this duration to be balanced, and it has two pillars. One is related to the projections of the companies. These are some of the basic principles on the price determination method, and also there is the supply and demand balance, because all in all, you are selling an instrument, and that instrument in the end is distributed to a group of investors. The behaviors of these investors and the expectations of the investors are very crucial. We are saying that domestic and national investors, because they might have long-term approaches. So these are two main pillars. And in terms of the prices of the market, these two pillars are very crucial. And after IPO is made, when it comes to price stability, we can also talk about the second part, which is the supply and demand part, behaviors of the investors, expectations of the investors, how to manage this. If there's a pressure over this, what can we do in order to set the price? We need to take certain steps, of course. For instance, a fund must be allocated for price stability. This is what I've seen. And generally, we are talking about 15 to 20% for the IPOs. This was the general view, but this was the general practice, 15 to 20%. Reasonably, logically, 15 to 20% under normal circumstances can provide this stability. So beyond that, in order for the shareholders to support their messages, maybe in order for those messages to be on the forefront, they say that it could be even up to 50%. There is no limitation. There is this price stability fund, main partner. If it has different resources, it could be also supported with secondary instruments after IPO is made, but this is short term till the price is set on a certain level, and the performance of the company is very crucial on the midterm and the long term. When we have a look at the IPOs, this is what we see in terms of price stability. Median, at least for this year, for instance, 46 IPOs in Turkey, 25% to 30%. It's the first month price performance, and in the second month it increases a bit, and in the third month it has the peak at certain level. Then after 6 months of IPO, certain companies can go some decreased levels. So as I've said it before, there must be a balance so that the price could settle down a bit. And beyond that, after 6 months and beyond 6 months, maybe the performance of the price is based on the general performance of the company and the markets. Thank you very much, Sadık. Of course, this is very crucial. Our investors should know about price stability related transactions processes, but as Sadık has mentioned, this is on our regulation and made on a certain short duration. Of course, checking the price stability is crucial, but it is not correct if they make their investment choices based on these, because after a certain period, maybe after 6 months, financials of the companies could be used to make the price determination. So we can understand price determination reports importance once again. When the stockbrokers, intermediary institutions arrange these price determination report, there are certain protection activities for the investors and in also the companies. We don't want investors to be suffering from the changes of the price, and companies should also be not suffering, of course, based on their IPO prices. And IPOs could be supported with the with this balance. I think we have to take this balance into consideration, and I believe at the very end, those abnormalities could be eliminated for all the other stakeholders and shareholders. We could eliminate many problems if the stockbrokers can evaluate price determination method very well. And also the education level of our domestic investors is very crucial. Even they don't know about the activity area of the company, they just rush into IPOs because there is too much demand over those company. And this is what they are doing in a wrongful way. And this is midterm and in long-term investment areas. Just in a month, you can't understand a company because 1 month is something, nothing actually. For the company side, investors have big responsibilities and they have to have a very long-term perspective in order to gain capital income and also profit share. They have to keep what they have for longer terms. Another question is very similar after IPO for a certain period of time. There is not much income, but after a certain period, then the prices could increase. It is because of the high demand of the investors, I think. And as Sadık has mentioned, after a certain time, it could be normalized, it could be saturated, but this is something which investors should be paying attention. I don't know, what can you say about price determination report, Mete Bey? Maybe you can also provide your own perspective, because it's also something like this. It's a very conflicting process. I mean, because the companies would like to give higher prices for IPOs, and also the intermediary institutions, they try to protect the investors' rights and maybe try to keep the balance in between. So what can you say? By the way, we were very lucky in our IPO process, and our team, intermediary team, was a very knowledgeable team for the prices and price determination methods. Quality is very much in line with the analyst who is carrying out those analyses. As the management team, we wanted to be on the safe side. We wanted to be rest assured that this company could really do this. The ones who are selling it, of course, are always asking, can you sell more? But the intermediary, the stockbrokers said that don't create any problems for the investors and be on the safe side again. So at the very end, we can say that I think we have done the right thing on the price determination method again. And we can see that even after a year, we are at a very great point. So I think these intermediate institutions should be definitely listened to. And we need to get use of their experience. This is very critical, because the ones who are selling, of course, I mean, even you and me, it doesn't matter. We, of course, would like to maximize what we get in return of our sale. But this is not the issue. This is the thing. The company should be flourishing and alive again. Thank you very much, Mete. As I've mentioned before, and as Capital Markets Board, as a regulator, we evaluate price determination reports on the processes of IPOs. If it is needed, we intervene in the situations and make the required corrections. We are very sensitive about this. Projections and assumptions of the companies about IPOs should also be followed. So our Capital Markets Board has these responsibilities as well. And in the upcoming period, we will be analyzing IPOs. So all the investors could be very much rest assured that we will be doing our best for the investors as well. The report handling institutions and intermediary broker institutions, we will be, of course, in contact with them, and we will be following the processes. As the head of our institution mentioned yesterday, we will be closely following the situation. This trend is going on like this, but we will be sensitive. And our brokers, our intermediary institutions, they should also be sensitive. We don't want either side to be suffering from the bad prices. We don't want any side to be unhappy, and we will be doing our due diligence. I don't know, maybe Canan Bey, there might be something that you'd like to say, because you are one of the very active institutions working for IPOs. Maybe we can talk about a specific analysis, especially in recent times, IPOs. There's been a difference prior to the compared to previous IPOs. In the past, till 2019, between 2010 and 2019, we carried out an analysis on a data set. Investors' mean age was 50. And in 2020 and 2021 IPOs, mean age was reduced down to 40. I think this is a very striking data. I just wanted to share it with you. So younger investors number is increasing and the mean age is getting much more lower. And as I've stated before, and as parallel to the statistics I mentioned, there is a very high demand, and those demands were between 45 to 55 years of age. But in 2020 and 2021, that demand was actually received by the age of 35 to 45. And this age group in the upcoming years will be, I believe, contributing to the development of capital market sport. This is a specific analysis based on a certain sampling. I mean, it's not something generalized. I just wanted to give this as an example. Thank you very much. We have come to the end of our session. If I'm to wrap it up very shortly, in this panel, we've discussed IPOs and we listened to the important presentations from the panelists, and we have discussed each and every important point for IPOs. And I'd like to thank all the panelists for their contribution. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much.